Welcome back, everyone, to an episode of Talking Stuff on LettermenRow.com. I am your host, Jeremy Birmingham. Today is Sunday, October 27th. We are about, 20 some hours, maybe 24. 24 again, as I told you the other night, I'm not really good at math. So we're 24 hours or so after Ohio State's big 38-7 win over Wisconsin, a game that was certainly rain soaked, and I think that in some ways the rain affected a little bit of the recruiting juice that could have come out of this weekend. But the reality is that the kids who are on campus have been raving about the experience, and Ohio State was able to put their best foot forward with a handful of top recruits in the class of 2021. And of course, as we talked about on the Wednesday night edition of Talking Stuff, Wednesday, Thursday, I'm not real good at counting days either. It was Thursday. We did a preview, a visitor preview before this Wisconsin game. And I told you then that I thought the biggest and most important visitor for the weekend was Jack Miller, the quarterback commitment for Ohio State from Chaparral High School in Scottsdale, Arizona. Jack arrived on Saturday morning bright and early after winning a big game against Michigan commitment J.D. Johnson and Pinnacle High School out in Phoenix. And, Jack arrived as he always has and looked pretty comfortable. Seeing him on the sideline before the game. And then after the game, he looked like a kid who really felt like he was at home from talking to people around his family and the Ohio State program on Sunday afternoon. I feel very comfortable saying that at this point, the Millers who have done the right things over the last few months. So as all this talk about another quarterback has come up, they've said the right things. They haven't made other visits. The confidence from Ohio State is very high that no matter what happens with the quarterback position, no matter who is added to the class, and I do believe it's inevitable that someone else is going to be in this class at quarterback, no matter where they go at that position, they feel confident that Jack Miller is going to be a part of that future. And I really think that in some ways, because of the injuries that have sort of hampered Jack in the last year, people have forgotten how good this kid can be. He's 6'4", he's 210 pounds. He's not a speed burner by any stretch, but he can move quite well in the pocket and out of the pocket. Showed that on Friday night against Pinnacle with some key runs to move the chains. And when it comes down to just dropping back and throwing the football, there are very few high school seniors in the country who are as good at doing that as Jack Miller is. Now, how that translates to Ohio State, I don't know. I mean, a lot of things can happen between now and the first time he steps on the field as a freshman or a sophomore, or whenever that happens. But what you need to know is that Jack is a player that Ohio State has believed could run their offense for the last 2+ years. And they're happy to know that he's still planning on being there. So that's kind of where we're at with Jack Miller. Expect, hopefully, no more drama around that recruitment. And not that he's put any of the drama out there himself, but people love to talk and make assumptions when these kids are put in positions that they would feel uncomfortable. And I don't know if it's because people just want to create a headline or whatever, but as I said, the Millers have consistently said the right things and done the right things in their recruitment, in their commitment. And Ohio State and Jack Miller, the weekend came and went as expected, and things are on solid footing there. So what we're going to do in this episode is circle back to talk primarily about the three guys that I mentioned on the Thursday preview show, which was Emeka Egbuka, the 5-star receiver from Washington, Will Shipley, the 5-star running back from North Carolina, and Damon Payne. We'll start with Payne, the 4-star defensive lineman from Belleville, Michigan, because he did not make the visit. As of right now, I'm still not sure exactly why that didn't happen, but he's been to Ohio State 7 or 8 different times, and the relationship there is very strong. And it's one of those things where whether it was the weather or something else, I don't know. But Ohio State was expecting Damon Payne to show up on Saturday. He did not. The end. I'm sure he'll be back at some point in the near future. His interest in Ohio State is very, very high. Moving on, we're going to talk about first Emeka Egbuka, the 9th-ranked player in the country in the class of 2021. He's a 6'1", 200-pound wide receiver. And I'll tell you what, from March, when we saw Egbuka on campus at Ohio State for the first time, he visited for a junior day back in March, to now seeing him on Saturday, he looks like a player who has really gotten physically bigger. And I don't know if you've ever seen a photo of Julian Fleming. who is the country's top-ranked 2020 receiver. Fleming is obviously a 6'3", 210-pound kid, and he's really well put together. Egbuka is starting to get that sort of thickness to him. He looks a lot bigger than he did when I saw him in March. But aside from how he looked size-wise, the most important thing for Ohio State is how he looked comfort-wise. He made this trip with his mother, who also visited in March. And I'll tell you what, when you see him on the sideline at Ohio State, he looks like a guy who believes that he's at home there. He looks very comfortable talking to the coaches, very comfortable talking to other recruits, and a player that is full of confidence. So it's not entirely surprising to see that he's comfortable anywhere. But I think when you're talking about a player potentially leaving home and going some 2,000 plus miles away, like Egbuka, who's from Steilacoom, Washington, would have to do, you have to feel pretty good knowing that he feels comfortable at Ohio State. The Ohio State side of things, the Buckeyes believe that they are as comfortable and is in a good of a relationship with Egbuka as anybody in the country. That includes Washington, Stanford, Clemson, Alabama, LSU, USC, any of the other schools that are in his top 10. Talking to sources around the Ohio State program on Sunday, the feeling right now is that it's sort of a 4-team race out of those 10, and that's Ohio State, Clemson, Washington, and Stanford, with Washington and Stanford, because of their proximity to home, being the better bet, I guess, at this point, if you had to put money on anyone. But that's not to say that Ohio State doesn't feel confident that they can land Emeka Egbuka, because the relationship that he has with Brian Hartline is on a different plane than the relationship he has with anyone else. How does that play out long term? I guess we'll see. It does get harder and harder for kids as they get closer to a decision to really consider going away from home. But what's important is that Ohio State has now seen him twice on his own dime in 6 months. And that's something that you really can't try to ignore the value of. That's a huge commitment by Egbuka to do that. It's a huge commitment by his family to pay for that, both time and financially. So pay close attention to that one. He is, as I said on Thursday, absolutely unequivocally the top recruiting target at wide receiver for Ohio State in the class of 2021. He is the guy in that class that they have highlighted, underlined, circled, whatever, as the main guy on that board. Moving away from Egbuka, let's talk about Will Shipley, the running back from North Carolina. I think that his recruitment is going to be very interesting, because I don't see that Shipley is a guy who's going to be afraid to leave home. He's looking at Ohio State, Notre Dame, Clemson, all the big schools. He's a 5-star running back, top-ranked all-purpose back in the country. He's a guy that wants to be used, as I mentioned the other day, as a Christian McCaffrey, Curtis Samuel type running back. And what he saw on Saturday was Ohio State really using J.K. Dobbins and Master Teague in a way that he's not seen running backs be used anywhere else that he's been. And I think that that's a real plus for Ohio State. Plus, what you're looking at is a four-pronged approach in his recruitment. You got Ryan Day involved, you have Tony Alford involved, you have Brian Hartline involved, and Kevin Wilson involved. And Ohio State may not be entirely sure yet, how do you put a guy like this into the offense? Where does he go? But what they do know across the board is that everyone likes him, and everyone says this is a kid they want in their class. So the first visit is always the most important visit for a recruit. It really sets the tone for the rest of the recruitment. And Ohio State absolutely knocked it out of the park with Will Shipley on his visit. We are going to have more with Shipley coming up this week on Lettermen Row, so make sure you check that out. Finally, tonight, I want to make sure we mention Jordan Hancock, a 3-star defensive back from Suwanee, Georgia. He made the visit this week and was offered by Ohio State on his trip. He told me leading up into the visit that an offer from Ohio State would be sort of a dream school scenario for him. A lot of kids say that. A lot of kids don't mean it. So I guess we'll see how that plays out. But he's a player that Ohio State has identified very early, despite the fact that he's a 3-star and people want to dive into what all that means. But he's 6'1", 175 pounds. The Buckeyes really like what he brings on the field. Physical cornerback prospect who can run. And that's a player I think you need to watch out for as potentially a sleeper emerging in this class, because there is a real connection between Ohio State and Hancock. And now that the Buckeyes have offered early, they put themselves right in the mix for a player down in Georgia. And it's important when you're dealing with prospects from that part of the country to make sure you offer early so that you can get in and really build that relationship before the Georgias and Alabamas and LSUs and Clemsons of the world start to sniff around. So Ohio State always ahead of the curve in the Southeast when it comes to evaluating talent. And now they've offered Jordan Hancock. So check out him and his film. I'll make sure I put that in the description on YouTube. So that is going to be it for this episode of Talking Stuff on Lettermen Row. If you're watching on YouTube, please like and subscribe. If you are watching or listening on a podcast platform, please leave a review, review. It's a review, not a rank, right? Because you can't rank us. But anyway, review, I guess, if you want to say something nice. If you're just going to be mean, just keep it to yourself, because sometimes it's hard to just keep hearing from you people about my genes and stuff like that. But anyway, that is that. So thanks for listening. Thanks for watching, and we'll check you out next time. Thanks.
Thanks for watching. Subscribe below to get the latest videos from Lettermen Row.
We got Letterman Live, we've got the practice report, we got rapid reaction. Hey, and we got Buckeye IQ with Zach Bourne.
For sure. We got recruiting breakdowns with Berm. We got whatever you need. Ohio State football and Ohio State athletics, we've got you covered here at Lettermen Row.